Rain hammered the broken windows of the old farmhouse as Evelyn stumbled inside, clutching a letter with trembling hands. The room smelled of dust and abandonment, each shadow whispering forgotten grief. Evelyn said, "How could they hide this from me all these years?" Her voice cracked as thunder rolled across the night sky, echoing her despair. She pressed the letter to her chest, her tears smudging the ink, the words bleeding into blurred truths. The floorboards creaked, not with footsteps but with the weight of memory pressing down. She remembered her mother's gentle lullabies, and how they now rang hollow against the storm outside. Evelyn whispered, "Was my life built on lies?" Her reflection in the broken mirror trembled with her. Her jaw clenched, shoulders heaving as if carrying an unbearable burden. Each breath was a battle, each heartbeat a reminder of betrayal. The farmhouse groaned as the storm intensified, its walls shaking with grief as raw as hers. She fell to her knees, the letter slipping from her grasp. In the flicker of lightning, the truth stared back at her. Devastating, undeniable, and irreversible. Morning crept into the farmhouse with pale light, washing over Evelyn as she lay on the wooden floor, eyes swollen, the letter beside her like a curse. The storm had passed, but the silence was heavier than thunder. She whispered, "What else did they hide?" Her voice barely more than breath, words swallowed by emptiness. Dust floated in thin beams of light cutting through broken shutters, highlighting her disheveled hair and damp clothes. She felt like a stranger in her own skin, body aching, heart fractured. Rising slowly, she touched the letter again, her fingers hesitant as if the paper itself burned. She said, "I need answers," her tone brittle, fragile, carrying more resolve than she felt. Outside, the fields glistened under dew, deceptively peaceful. But Evelyn's world had cracked, and no sunrise could mend it. Her reflection in the glass of a broken cabinet showed someone unrecognizable, haunted, hollow, desperate for truth. Evelyn stepped outside, her boots sinking into mud, softened by the storm. The air was sharp with the smell of wet earth and broken branches. Birds sang cautiously, as if uncertain the night's fury had ended. She looked at the farmhouse, its walls sagging, its windows shattered, and whispered, "You kept my pain alive." The letter crumpled in her hand, veins in her wrist taut with tension. She recalled her mother's warm embrace, but the memory twisted into betrayal, a sweetness poisoned. She breathed deep, her chest tight with a mix of grief and anger, and raised her face to the sky. The sun struggled to pierce the clouds, casting a weak light over her features, pale and worn. She thought of leaving, but every path felt like a lie waiting to unfold. "I can't run from this anymore," she said, her voice trembling with a fragile courage she didn't believe yet. She wandered to the edge of the field, the horizon stretching endlessly, as if daring her to step forward. The letter weighed on her like chains. Her mind replayed words she wished unread. She whispered, "Why would they bury me in lies?" Wind brushed across the grass, carrying echoes of voices she couldn't silence. Evelyn recalled the gentle lull of her mother's song, but now it sounded cruel, a melody masking a hidden truth. Her boots carried her toward the oak tree she once climbed as a child, now skeletal, branches stripped by storms. She ran her hand across the bark, rough and cold, grounding her in reality she wished to escape. The air was heavy, skies pale with aftermath, her breath visible in chill morning air. "If I dig deeper, what will I destroy?" she asked, her tone brittle as the broken tree beneath her palm. By midday, Evelyn returned to the farmhouse, her steps heavier, each dragging with the weight of unspoken fears. Inside, she placed the letter on the table, staring at it as if it were alive, a venomous thing. She whispered, "This paper holds my past hostage." Sunlight slipped through cracks in the roof, falling across her face like fractured truth. Her reflection in the cracked window met her gaze with defiance she didn't feel. She sat slowly, her hands clasped, knuckles white, her heartbeat thunder in silence. Memories seeped in, laughter by the fireplace, stories told at dusk, all painted lies. She slammed the table with her fist, voice breaking. I need to know everything. The air vibrated with her cry, her own pain ricocheting off the walls. She felt the house breathing with her, alive in grief, and as her tears fell again, she realized the journey for truth had only begun. The afternoon sun fell weakly across the farmhouse table as Evelyn unfolded the letter once more, the edges already frayed by her trembling hand. The silence around her felt like judgment, heavy and unrelenting. She whispered, "If this is true, everything I believed is shattered." Her voice broke as shadows stretched across the floor, long and sharp like memories refusing to fade. She remembered her father's absence, the excuses whispered, the pain she swallowed. Her chest tightened, each breath shallow, as though the air itself carried betrayal. The walls, worn with cracks and peeling paint, seemed to echo her thoughts with cruel precision. She muttered, "They chose lies over love," bitterness searing her tongue. Tears burned at the corners of her eyes, yet her jaw locked, anger fusing with grief. The letter's words carved wounds deeper than silence ever could, and she felt the ground beneath her heart beginning to split. Later that day, Evelyn walked into the village, the streets still damp from the storm. Each stone seemed to carry whispers of history, and her steps were heavy with doubt. She stopped at the old shop front where Margaret, the mentor figure of her childhood, arranged jars along a wooden shelf. Evelyn hesitated before entering, her voice low, "I need to know the truth." Margaret's eyes, lined with age and sorrow, softened, but her silence was heavier than words. The shop smelled of herbs and earth, grounding Evelyn as her chest swelled with unspoken questions. Margaret finally said, "Some truths come with a cost, child." Evelyn's breath caught, the warning slicing through her fragile resolve. She clenched her fists, whispering, "I'll pay it, I have to." The air in the small shop seemed to thicken, pressing against them both. Evelyn sat across from Margaret, the wooden table between them scarred with years of use. The mentor's voice was steady, yet sadness lingered in her tone. "Your mother carried burdens you were too young to bear," she said. Evelyn's hands shook, the letter clenched tightly as if the words could dissolve under her grip. She asked, "Why would she lie to me? Wasn't I enough?" Margaret's gaze lowered, eyes glistening. "She feared losing you, feared the past would poison your future." Evelyn's breath came sharp, a mix of anger and longing twisting inside her. The weight of betrayal pressed against her ribs, threatening to crush what little strength she clung to. She said, "But the lies poisoned me anyway." The room darkened as clouds swallowed the light outside, reflecting the storm rising again in her heart. That evening, Evelyn walked back through the village streets, her body heavy with Margaret's words. Lanterns flickered against stone walls, casting long, restless shadows. She whispered, "If I can't trust her memory, who can I trust?" A stranger lingered near the well, his presence unfamiliar yet oddly unsettling. He glanced at her, eyes sharp, expression unreadable. Evelyn quickened her pace, the letter tucked close to her chest as though it were a shield. The man's stare burned into her back, and she felt the chill of warning in his silence. She muttered, "Even shadows watch me now." The cobblestones echoed with her hurried steps, each sound amplifying her dread. The night air tightened around her, carrying secrets she had yet to uncover. Back in the farmhouse, Evelyn locked the door, her heart pounding from the man's silent gaze. She leaned against the wooden frame, whispering, "Even strangers know more than me." The candle on the table flickered as wind slipped through the cracks, shadows dancing against the walls. She sat down, pulling the letter close again, reading lines she had already memorized, each word cutting deeper. Her voice trembled. "This isn't just about me. It's about everything we were." The farmhouse groaned in the night, floorboards shifting as though bearing witness to her unraveling. She pressed her forehead against the letter, eyes shut, chest heaving. Tears fell onto the paper once more, smearing the ink further. She whispered, "I need to find the answers before the lies bury me alive." The air seemed to tighten, every creak in the farmhouse echoing her vow. The next morning, Evelyn walked along the muddy path leading into the woods, her boots sinking into soft earth. The letter was tucked inside her coat, burning like a secret against her chest. Birds scattered overhead, startled by her presence. She whispered, "Every step I take drags me deeper into shadows." The forest was dense, branches twisting above like grasping fingers, filtering pale sunlight into fractured beams. She remembered childhood games here, laughter echoing between trees, but now each memory carried a bitter edge. Her breath fogged in the chill air, and she gripped her coat tighter, heart pounding. A figure moved ahead, fleeting, vanishing between trunks, and her pulse quickened. She muttered, "I'm not alone." The woods pressed close around her, silence heavy, broken only by the snap of twigs underfoot. Her journey for truth had drawn others from the dark. Deeper into the woods, Evelyn paused by a moss-covered stone, her breath shallow. The silence was unnatural, as though the forest itself withheld answers. She pulled the letter out again, its edges worn, ink faint. Her voice cracked. "Why does this paper carry the weight of my life?" A gust of wind lifted strands of her hair, and she clutched the letter closer, fearing it might vanish into the air. She remembered her father's voice, low and distant, telling her half-truths that now sounded like rehearsed excuses. Anger stirred inside her, sharp and unyielding. She said, "If betrayal lives here, I will tear it out." The words echoed softly, swallowed by trees that had heard too many secrets. Her knees weakened under the burden of her determination, yet she forced herself onward, eyes searching for whoever walked ahead. Suddenly, the shadow she had glimpsed revealed itself. Thomas, her estranged uncle, stepped from behind the trees. His face was lined, hardened by time and secrets. Evelyn froze, the letter clutched against her chest. He said coldly, "You were never meant to see that." Her blood chilled, and fury rose to meet her fear. Evelyn whispered, "Then you knew. You all knew." Thomas's eyes flickered with guilt before narrowing again. Some truths destroy more than they heal. Her fists tightened, trembling with rage. She said, "Silence already destroyed me." His presence was suffocating, a living reminder of betrayal, and her chest ached with the weight of recognition. The forest grew darker around them, shadows thickening as if conspiring with him. Evelyn's voice hardened. "I won't stop digging." Evelyn's breath quickened as Thomas stepped closer, his tone low, sharp. "Your mother kept her silence for your sake," he said. Her stomach knotted, rage boiling. She spat back, "No, she kept it for yours." His jaw tightened, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of shame. He turned away briefly, staring at the ground, before meeting her gaze again. "The past is heavier than you think," he muttered, voice breaking with buried regret. Evelyn's chest heaved, the letter trembling in her grasp, the forest spinning with the weight of revelation. She whispered, "You fear truth more than lies." The silence that followed was thick, their pain colliding in the brittle air. Her pulse thundered as she realized he held more than she imagined. By twilight, Evelyn left Thomas standing in the clearing, his words echoing like poison. She stumbled back toward the farmhouse, heart hammering, each step dragging betrayal deeper into her bones. The letter weighed heavier now, a curse that refused to leave her hands. She whispered, "I can't let him bury this truth too." The path home blurred, her tears falling hot and fast, streaking her face as shadows lengthened. The farmhouse emerged in the distance, a silhouette of broken walls against fading light. She stopped, chest tight, legs trembling, her body caught between collapse and fury. Whispering, "This house holds my ghosts," she dragged herself forward, determination burning through the ache. Her grief had hardened into fire, and she knew Thomas's silence would not stop her. The night embraced her return, wrapping every secret closer. The farmhouse creaked under the weight of night as Evelyn spread the letter across the table once more. Candlelight flickered, its glow trembling against cracked walls. Her heart pounded, words screaming from the page. She whispered, "It wasn't an accident. It was a choice." Her hands shook violently, the truth striking like lightning. She remembered nights when her mother sat in silence, her eyes distant, her words careful, as though guarding a secret too dangerous to speak. Evelyn's throat tightened as she muttered, she carried this lie for him. The image of Thomas flashed in her mind, his guilt unmasked in the forest. Rage flared within her, sharp enough to pierce through grief. She whispered, he was the reason she suffered. The air grew suffocating, the farmhouse alive with the storm of revelation. Evelyn's voice cracked. All this time, the shadow was in my own blood. Evelyn stormed into the village at dawn, fury propelling her steps. The streets were empty, the air crisp with morning chill, but her heart burned like fire. She muttered, he thought he could bury the truth forever. Her boots struck the cobblestones with force, the sound echoing through silence. Shop doors remained shuttered, yet she felt unseen eyes upon her. The weight of betrayal pressed against her chest, every breath steeped in anger. Margaret appeared outside her shop, eyes widening at Evelyn's hardened expression. "Child, what are you doing?" she asked, voice trembling with fear. Evelyn's reply cut sharp as broken glass. "I'm ending this silence." The village seemed to recoil, its stillness bending beneath her defiance. Every step she took forward deepened her resolve. The truth would be dragged into daylight. Evelyn found Thomas outside the well, his shoulders hunched as though the weight of years bore him down. Her voice cut through the stillness. "You destroyed her." His head snapped up, guilt flashing before anger hardened his features. "You don't understand," he barked. Evelyn stepped closer, letter clenched in her hand like a weapon. "I understand enough. You were the lie she lived for." His jaw tightened, but his eyes betrayed the fracture of regret. He muttered, "It was never meant to fall on you." Evelyn's chest heaved, her voice a whisper sharpened by grief. "It already has." Silence strangled the space between them, villagers beginning to gather quietly in the distance, their eyes wary but drawn. For the first time, Thomas seemed smaller, stripped of his shadows, cornered by truth. The crowd thickened, whispers rippling through the air like restless ghosts. Evelyn's voice rang out, fierce and unyielding. "She died carrying your burden, and I will not carry it too." Thomas's face twisted, half in rage, half in sorrow, his fists trembling at his sides. "You don't know the whole story," he growled, but the words faltered. Evelyn's eyes burned as she raised the letter, ink still smudged with her tears. This is the story, written in her silence, written in her pain. The villagers' stares pinned Thomas, judgment pressing upon him like stone. He faltered, his gaze falling, shoulders sagging beneath the truth. Evelyn's breath came in shudders, but her voice held steady. "You buried her light with your darkness, and I refuse to live in its shadow." As silence thickened, Thomas finally spoke, his voice raw, broken. "I wasn't the only one. She chose to stay silent too." The confession struck like a hammer, the weight of it cracking Evelyn's breath. Her eyes widened, tears threatening as rage battled heartbreak. She whispered, "She chose silence to protect me." Thomas shook his head, eyes glistening. "No, she chose it to protect herself." The words shattered the fragile image Evelyn had clung to, rewriting her mother's memory with devastating clarity. She staggered back, the letter slipping from her grasp, fluttering to the dirt. The crowd gasped, the truth laid bare in cruel simplicity. Evelyn's voice broke. "Everything I loved was built on lies." The square pulsed with the ache of revelation, the weight of truth pressing down on them all, impossible to escape. The farmhouse walls seemed to close in around Evelyn as she sat in silence, her body shaking. Thomas's words echoed, twisting every memory into shards. She whispered, was she protecting me or herself? Her hands gripped the edge of the table until her knuckles whitened, the wood digging into her skin. The letter lay crumpled on the floor, dirt smearing its fragile truth. She thought of her mother's embrace, once her sanctuary, now tainted by doubt. The air inside was heavy, suffocating, as though the house itself carried the weight of betrayal. She pressed her forehead against her palms, her voice raw. "I don't know who to be without her honesty." The silence screamed louder than storms, and Evelyn's chest heaved with the unbearable collision of love and rage. Night had fallen, and Evelyn stood at the broken window, staring into darkness. The fields stretched endlessly, pale moonlight painting them silver. She whispered, "The truth feels colder than any storm." Her reflection in the shattered glass was fractured, pieces of her face scattered across sharp edges. She thought of Margaret's warnings, of Thomas's guilt, of her mother's silence, all tangled like threads choking her soul. Her breath fogged against the glass, a fragile rhythm in the still night. She whispered, "If I keep digging, I may destroy what little I have left." Yet the ache in her heart pushed her forward, daring her to face the ruin. Tears blurred her sight, dripping onto the sill, each drop echoing like a countdown. The next morning, Evelyn returned to the oak tree at the edge of the field. The branches stretched bare and skeletal, their shadows long in the weak light. She pressed her palm to the bark, her voice low. "You held my secrets once, can you hold my truth now?" Her body trembled as she remembered climbing its branches as a child, her mother's laughter below. Now the same tree felt like a grave marker, a witness to silence. Her eyes burned as she whispered, "She chose herself over me." The wind stirred the fields, bending grass in waves, carrying her grief into distance. She leaned against the trunk, her body heavy, her breath ragged. The letter's words haunted her, but so did her own reflection. A woman lost in the ruins of family. Later, Margaret found Evelyn by the tree, her eyes red and hollow. Margaret's voice was soft. "You cannot live only in their shadows." Evelyn turned sharply, anger flashing through her tears. "What else do I have? They left me lies, nothing more." Margaret stepped closer, her face etched with pain. "Truth is cruel, but so is drowning in it." Evelyn shook her head, fists clenching. "If I let it go, I betray myself." Silence settled, broken only by the rustle of wind through branches. Margaret's eyes glistened, her voice trembling. "Then carry it, but carry it as your story, not theirs." Evelyn's chest tightened, her grief colliding with the faintest spark of defiance. That evening, Evelyn sat by the cold fireplace, the farmhouse dim and silent. Her hands rested on her knees, body still as stone. She whispered, "If I am broken, then I will break with my own truth, not theirs." The flames had long died, leaving only ash, a mirror of her hollow heart. Shadows filled the corners, shifting like ghosts of her past. She closed her eyes, her chest rising slowly, each breath a battle between collapse and survival. Memories of her mother flickered. Smiles, songs, embraces, each memory fraying into lies. Evelyn's tears fell quietly, no sobs, only steady surrender. Her voice steadied, fragile but fierce. "They will not define me." The words, spoken in solitude, ignited a spark in the silence, a vow carved into the night. Storm clouds rolled back over the village as Evelyn stood at the well, the crowd already gathering. Her body trembled, but her eyes burned with fire. She whispered, "No more silence." Thomas appeared, his face shadowed, shoulders tense as the villagers pressed in closer. Evelyn raised her voice, sharp and unyielding. "She died carrying your secret, and I refuse to carry it anymore." Thomas's jaw locked, his voice low, trembling with fury. "You will destroy everything with this." Evelyn's chest heaved, her hands clenched. "Better destroyed than buried alive." Gasps rippled through the crowd, the weight of her words splitting the morning stillness. Thomas stepped closer, his face inches from hers, his presence suffocating, but Evelyn stood unmoved. The square pulsed with tension, as though the air itself was holding its breath. Rain began to fall, thin at first, streaking across Evelyn's face, mixing with tears. Thomas's voice cracked through the storm. "She chose me because she knew you were too weak." The words cut like a blade, but Evelyn's fury flared brighter. She shouted, "Weak? I have carried the weight of lies you couldn't bear yourself." The crowd stirred, whispers rising, their faces etched with disbelief. Evelyn's body shook, her fists trembling, but she refused to lower her gaze. Lightning cracked across the sky, illuminating the moment with violent light. Thomas's hands balled into fists at his sides, his chest heaving with restrained rage. Evelyn's voice steadied, sharp and relentless. Her silence broke me, but it will never break me again. The villagers leaned in closer, the storm swelling with her defiance. The storm intensified, thunder rattling the ground as Evelyn took a step forward. Her voice cracked with grief, yet it carried strength. You think silence protects, but it kills. It killed her. And it tried to kill me. Thomas staggered slightly, his face twisting between rage and despair. For a fleeting moment, Evelyn saw not a monster, but a broken man crushed by his own lies. Yet her voice did not soften. You buried the truth to protect yourself, not us. The villagers gasped, their whispers swelling into murmurs of agreement. Thomas's eyes darted toward the crowd, panic flickering in his gaze. Evelyn's body trembled, but her voice rose above the storm. You will not chain me to your sins. Her words struck with the force of thunder, leaving silence in their wake. Thomas's anger shattered into desperation as he shouted, If you expose this, you'll lose everything. The family name, the little legacy left. Evelyn's heart ached, her body weak. But her voice cut clean. What's a legacy built on lies worth? The words hung heavy, the storm seeming to still for a breath. Margaret stepped from the crowd, her voice firm, trembling with courage. The truth is already here, Thomas. It can't be buried again. Evelyn's chest swelled with emotion as she turned to Margaret, eyes glistening with gratitude. Then her gaze returned to Thomas, harder than stone. She died in silence, but I will live in truth. Thunder roared overhead, as though sealing her vow. The villagers watched, spellbound, caught between fear and awe. The storm reached its peak, rain flooding the square, as Evelyn stood unflinching, soaked to the bone. Thomas collapsed to his knees, his voice breaking. I never wanted this to fall on you. His tears mixed with rain, his defiance gone. Evelyn's chest rose sharply, her grief colliding with triumph. She whispered, but it did, and I survived it. Her words pierced the storm, carried by raw strength. Villagers pressed closer, eyes wide, breaths shallow. Margaret placed a trembling hand on Evelyn's shoulder, whispering, You've broken the silence. Evelyn lifted her face toward the rain, tears hidden in the downpour. Her body quaked, but her soul blazed with fierce clarity. I am no longer theirs to define, she said, her voice ringing out like thunder. The crowd fell silent, the storm itself bowing to her declaration. Morning light spilled softly over the drenched village square, painting golden hues across the cobblestones. Evelyn stood still, her body weary but unbroken. The villagers had dispersed into hushed silence, but their gazes lingered with reverence and fear. She whispered, The storm is over, but the scars remain. Her clothes clung to her, soaked and heavy, her hands trembling with exhaustion. Margaret stood nearby, her eyes proud yet sorrowful. Evelyn looked at Thomas, still kneeling, his head bowed in defeat. She said, You cannot bind me to your darkness anymore. Her words felt lighter now, no longer a weapon, but a truth spoken into the open air. For the first time she breathed without choking on secrets. The square echoed with quiet, not of fear, but of release. Later that day, Evelyn walked through the fields, the wet grass brushing against her legs, the sky clearing into pale blue. She whispered, This land once felt like chains, but today it feels like breath. Her hands grazed the tall blades, each step grounding her in fragile peace. She thought of her mother's silence, of Thomas's fall, of Margaret's strength. The memories still hurt, sharp and jagged, but they no longer dictated her every breath. Her heart beat steady, slower now, as if finding its rhythm again. She paused beneath the skeletal oak, pressing her palm to its bark, and whispered, I carry her in truth now, not lies. A breeze stirred, gentle and warm, wrapping her like an embrace. The past no longer held her captive. It simply walked beside her. Evelyn returned to the farmhouse, the place where grief had once suffocated her. Now its broken walls seemed less like a prison and more like a witness. She whispered, "This house does not define me." Dust caught the beams of sunlight pouring through cracks, filling the air with golden haze. She touched the scarred table, remembering tears, rage, and shattered silence. Her fingers lingered, but her voice steadied. "I will not erase the pain, but I will not drown in it." She picked up the letter one last time, folding it carefully. Its ink was faded, blurred, but its power over her had dissolved. Setting it down gently, she said, "You belong to the past, and I belong to tomorrow." As dusk approached, Evelyn stood at the hill overlooking the village, her silhouette framed by the fading glow of the sky. She whispered, "I thought I was broken, but I was only buried." The horizon stretched wide, bathed in soft purples and fading gold, a promise of something new. Margaret's voice echoed in her memory, "Carry it as your story, not theirs." She pressed her hand to her chest, tears stinging her eyes but not falling. The ache was still there, but it no longer consumed her. Her voice steadied, "I choose to walk forward, even with the weight." The air was cool, fresh, alive with possibility. For the first time, Evelyn's heart did not feel caged, but open, trembling with fragile hope. Night fell gently, and Evelyn lit a single candle in the farmhouse, its glow soft and steady. She sat quietly, her hands folded, the silence no longer suffocating but tender. She whispered, "I survived the silence, and I found my voice." The flame flickered, illuminating her face, calm though still etched with sorrow. She thought of her mother, of the love she gave, and of the secrets she kept. Evelyn's voice softened. "I forgive you." The words trembled, but carried freedom. She blew out the candle, leaving the room in darkness, not of despair but of closure. The silence wrapped around her gently, like a blanket, no longer a prison but a companion. The night held her vow. She was not defined by lies but reborn in truth.